of all the poor things I used to do. I don't do no more, for the Lord's made a change in me.
This is Melissa, and it's the 7th of September 2023. And I will be sharing with you a recording that I did when my Aunt Mary was visiting for a few days in July. So we recorded this when she was 95 years old. Yesterday she celebrated her 96th birthday, and I think you'll be amazed at how engaged with life she is. She's always learning, curious, has a lot of projects on the go. She's had an interesting life, done a lot, and she shared a little bit of that with us. Yesterday I was on the phone with a woman that I'm going to record a real history with in a couple of weeks, and she discovered Allende's work after he passed away. She was able to take early retirement. We've all lived through a few crazy years, and that has spurred her to spend a lot of her time researching and trying to understand what's going on. And that is how she discovered Allende's work. She wanted to get past that, Democrat versus Republican, all of the things that are laid out for us to spend our lifetimes on, politics and fighting over religion or race and racial differences. And it's sad. It really is unfortunate that these things are put out for us to get so lost and consumed by. But she was talking about what do you do with the information and how do you find your true purpose? And it is interesting to talk to someone who is retired and still looking for purpose. And I told her basically what Allende had shared with me. When you have a better understanding of reality, that knowledge can bring with it what spurs you to find your purpose. And that can be when you're 20 or 30 or 50 or 70. It's the uncovering process. And Allende would say, hopefully we're always learning about ourselves and about the world and how the world really works. And Allende would say that finding that purpose can bring you meaning. That is your true purpose, and meaning can come with that. And that is, the word that comes to mind is consolation, because reality is pretty horrific when you face it head on. So the consolation is that you have a purpose. There is a purpose in you knowing what you know. And so how do you use your talents, your strengths, and your weaknesses to do something with what you know and your new understanding? And it isn't just proselytizing or preaching, that's not true, that's not how the world works, because then, as Allende would say, you're just a control freak, like the people who want to control our lives, We are all here to pursue our own purpose. And the woman that I was speaking with was talking about Allende's serious way of putting the information across. I said, yes, but he did laugh quite a bit in his personal life. And he told me that when you know what you know, you can't, of course, shut it off. You don't unknow it, and it's always with you. So you're with friends, you're in a social gathering, you are playing music or listening to music or gardening, whatever it is that you're doing, that knowledge is always with you, and it has a profound effect on you. But that doesn't mean that you can't laugh or enjoy beauty or, have your creative outlet. These things are part of the process of being, it's part of the experience of being fully human and fully alive. And in the redux that I just put up on the weekend, Allende was talking about how, unfortunately, in this system, so few people are able to integrate all of their personality. When he went on to say, we're not taught how to be individuals. So I was sad. I had anticipated that this would be a 2-part, and there'd be about 45 minutes of Mary, and then at some point down the road I would do the rest of the conversation with Mary, and Betty had actually joined at the tail end of it. And I'm just going to say right now that when Betty joined us, I don't know what I did wrong, but it did not record. So sad. Because the two of them talked about the experiences that they'd had in World War II, being with men. I mean, in the case of Mary, she met my uncle after the war, right after the war, and he had not been stationed abroad, but was stateside, so he hadn't seen action. And with my Aunt Betty, she was married to someone who did see a lot of action. He was a gunner on a plane, and he came home, she described it, shell-shocked and with malaria. And her brother-in-law also came home badly shell-shocked, but did recover, was able to marry and have children. And but it was an interesting conversation about the effects of war on particularly women. And then Mary shared a wonderful story about her trip out to see the Crazy Horse Monument. And you'll discover that Mary learned to sculpt. And someone that she had taken classes with has been involved in this project out there in South Dakota, which is going to be bigger than Mount Rushmore. Huge monument that is under construction and has been for a number of years. So I hope you enjoy this. I was inspired by my Aunt Mary because she is fully engaged in life. She's bright and curious and always learning, always wanting to figure things out for herself. She's independent. She is creative. I'd call her a dynamo at 96, so enjoy. Today I am so excited to be joined by my Aunt Mary. And Mary, my cousin actually just sent a message yesterday or the day before and said, I'm on my way up with the children. Mom wanted to visit an old friend. I'm dropping her off. And so is that okay? And she's actually staying over at Aunt Betty's house. And you've all heard Aunt Betty talking before. So this is exciting to me. And I saw Mary. It's been almost a year since I saw you, and then before that it was many, many years. Mm. So you can say hello to everybody who's listening.
Hello. It's very nice to say hello to all of you. It's very interesting to me that you have so many listeners, and they are interested in what you're saying, and the interviewers are giving their thoughts about life.
It is. It's been a fun thing to do because I get to know people and hearing their family stories, their backgrounds, their education, and I've talked to people from all over the world, so it has been a lot of fun. But I wanted to just briefly tell people just a little bit about you, and then we can talk about whatever you want to. But my Aunt Mary was married for a number of years, 28 years, to my uncle. That was my dad's older brother. So that is the relationship. I have 2 fine cousins from that. It was the fondest memories. I have to say this now. I don't want to embarrass you. But when I was a child, I just had this memory of my Aunt Mary being the most beautiful woman that I had ever seen in my life, and talented and sweet on top of that. So if you want to share anything about your childhood, your background, your education, to me it's so amazing. And some of the things that I just learned about you in this last year blew me away. I'll just say one. For instance, when my older brother went down to visit you last year, he came back reporting that you had your pilot's license, that you had learned to fly. I never knew that. Oh. So
Flying was a real adventure for me, because all of my life I have felt like I wasn't quite as intelligent as I would really like to be. But the funny thing was that after I learned to fly, and I flew by myself, many, many times, it gave me a renewed look at myself. And I thought, you're smarter than you thought you were. And after that, it really made a difference in my life. And of course, just being able to fly up in that beautiful blue sky, and it was just a most amazing adventure for me. I loved it. And I've always been very thankful that I had the opportunity. And this is one thing that I've taught my students at school, to never pass up a chance on learning something. Mm-hmm. Even if you know you're not going to use it, learn it. Because it increases everything mentally about yourself. And I do believe in learning new things. But the fact that I had the opportunity to learn to fly, and I took the opportunity, even though I was very, very fearful of the small airplanes. I got in that airplane, and one funny thing happened. When you're flying, you learn how to stall the plane, which means that you cut off the engine and you have stalled the plane in the air. And I was afraid of that. And in my mind, I thought, well, we won't ever do that on the first lesson. So we got to the plane, and I said to the pilot, now you get in the pilot's seat. And he said, well, I will, but I'm accustomed to teaching on the passenger side. So I got in the pilot's side, and we flew, and I learned a lot that day. And in the meantime, he stalled the plane on the first lesson. And I got that fear over, which was wonderful, because that was the only real fear that I had. I was anxious about it, but the fear was that stalling that plane in the air with the engine dead. Yeah. But it worked out, and I just learned it. And when I did my solo, I touched ground, flew up 6 times. I would fly over, come down, touch the land, go back up. And I did it 6 times.
Wow.
My instructor said, Mary, I thought you were never going to land. I said, well, I got to where I liked it, So, but it was quite a deal for me.
Well, I wanted to just say, before we dive into other interesting things, you said you have a birthday coming up in 2 months, which I couldn't believe because I was just down to see you in the very tip. Mary lives at the bottom of Texas, which is a long way away. It's a little more than an 8-hour drive. It's a big state. And I was down to visit you, I think it was late last August. So that was a lot of fun, and we're going to touch on all of the things that you showed me when I visited. Amazing. But you had that birthday, and now we're coming up. It'll be 2 months, so you have another. So how old are you?
I'm 95. We'll be 96 in September.
Unbelievable. And sharp as a tack, I might say.
I hope so.
So you trained to be a music teacher, and that's what you did for many years, or no? Okay.
The story of my becoming a band director is really interesting.
Oh, I'd never heard it, so let's go.
We lived in White Oak, Texas, and my husband was a band director in White Oak. And we had moved from a very small school. And at the small school, there was a coach. And unknowing to me, he had observed that I was very interested in the band. His name was Lanky. Lanky moved to another school, which was Union Grove. Mm-hmm. And the superintendent at Union Grove lost his band director. And so the superintendent came to our home in White Oak and visited with Wally, and he told Wally how much the job paid and told him all about it. And he asked Wally about different directors, and Wally told him the truth and said, no, he uses dope. You don't want to use him, you know. And he mentioned several band directors, but none of them really did Wally agree that they could do the job. And I had on an apron, which I never really wore, and I was washing dishes. So I walked to the door of the kitchen and looked into the living room, and I was drying my hands on that apron. And I said to the superintendent, man, are you looking for a band director at this time of the year? It was about 2 weeks before school started. And he said, yes, I am. And then he turned to Wallace and he said, the main reason I came here today was to hire your wife for my band director. And Wally and I looked at each other, and immediately Wally said, would you pay her what you said? He said, why, of course.
So he's your husband and your manager at this point.
Yeah. And so we talked for a little bit, you know, and he said, he being the superintendent, said, why don't you come to the school tomorrow afternoon at 2:30 and we can talk about it. So, okay. So Wally and I talked about band all night. You know, the trombone, the flutes, the clarinets, the oboes. And we got up the next morning and we went to the little school. It was about 15 miles from where we lived. We went in his office, and I'm telling you, in just a matter of minutes, that man handed me the keys to that band hall. And I became the band director. And I studied and I learned, and the little band was down to about 17 people. So I learned with the children, and I ended up with a 125-piece band, first division band.
Wow.
And I stayed there for 8 years, or 9 years.
Now, did you already know how to play the clarinet?
Mm-hmm.
So you were an accomplished, you were a good clarinetist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was the only instrument that I knew.
Right.
But before long, I was teaching. I learned all of it.
Wow.
But the first thing we had to play for the football games, you know, and of course the little children just didn't know what they were doing. But we got out there and they had their instruments, and you have never heard such wrong notes in your life. I can still hear
You're traumatized.
the notes. But overall, I was a band director for 19 years.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing. Now, we'll cut way, way ahead in the story.
All right.
But you had taught for a long, long time, not just music, but other things, but you had not taught long enough for the full pension. And if I get it wrong, you can correct me, but my mother and father had an opportunity when they were down in the south of Texas. They got you down, and that time that you were able to do at the school where they were working got you the full pension? Is that?
Yeah.
Is that?
Well, yes.
Okay.
They were teaching at one school, and the airport elementary needed a music teacher, an elementary music teacher. Mm-hmm. And your mother called and said, Mary, get down here and interview because there are music jobs. Randy drove me down there, and I got an interview with the principal, and I got an interview with her, and she hired me. Then I came, and they gave me 2 weeks to go back home and come back down and start teaching. So Randy drove me back home, and I packed up, left my house, and Randy drove me back to the valley, and then he flew back to Dallas. And I stayed there. I taught school at Weslaco for 8 years. and really, really enjoyed it. Many of the teachers from the north come down to the south, but they can't handle the culture, and they go back.
And the culture, just because there are listeners from all over the world and everything, the culture it's a border town, and you live in a different town now, but it's on the border of Texaco. It's on the border of Texas and Mexico.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of Hispanic people there, and so that is the culture that you're talking about. It's really more Hispanic than Caucasian.
And the Mexican people, they have such large families, and they celebrate for everything. And they don't really have time to invite their friends over like we do in East Texas, you know. But it doesn't mean they don't love you or they don't like you. They just don't have time because they have so many family members, and they celebrate everything, birthdays, anniversaries, and all. And but what Randy and I did, we read a book called Understanding Your Neighbor. And after we read that book, I was completely satisfied with it and stayed there for 8 years.
What was it that people from the north of Texas didn't like about the culture, and what was it that you learned in that book that helped you to...
The book helped me to know that these Mexican people were very kind and very thoughtful. You can't believe how nice these people are. They help you. The men will say, "Lady, can I help you?" The ladies will, and the men will take my groceries out of the basket and put it on the counter. "No, I'll help you," they'll say. But see, the people in the north, they didn't stay there long enough to really experience the kindness that these people have. I think, you know, and the fact that you were never invited to their homes, but it didn't mean that they didn't like you. It just meant that, you know, we have so many anniversaries, we just don't have time. And that was kind of one of the main things. And I'm really not sure what else the northern people couldn't handle, but they couldn't. Now, I have one friend from the north. She taught there 37 years. She just retired this past year. And she's been there all that time. And we were very close friends. And at school, in the afternoon, she was the computer teacher, and I was the music. And for some reason, we started waiting on each other in the library after school was out. If I got there first, I would wait for her. And if she got there first, she would wait for me. And then we would just walk out of the building together to our cars. Now, why we started doing that, I don't know. But it got to so that it was important, you know. I wouldn't dare walk out without Violet. And she wouldn't walk out without me. And so I always thought that was really neat. Just kind of a bonding, you know, after a day's work. That you have this little bonding that you look forward to, and we'd talk, you know, and she was crippled and had a hard time walking, but we managed, and we did that for years. Just wait on each other and walk out together. And I've always admired that because it was special to us. I really enjoy the city of McAllen because of the kindness and courtesy of the people. Almost every time I go out, somebody helps me. And they don't have to, you know, but they do it on their own.
Now, we're jumping all over the place, and that's okay, too. But when we were talking about culture, it just came into my head that my cousin, your daughter, had spent many, many years in Mexico with her husband, who was a priest, and they were in a beautiful, beautiful city north of Mexico City, and a city that attracted artists from all over the world, but it had a lot of culture. And what we definitely have to talk about your art.
Okay.
And I don't know if you want to go back to the beginning. You taught school band for 8 years. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that, and then life between that and art.
I think being a teacher, I think we pretty well covered everything. Okay. I taught at Union Grove for 8 years, and then I moved to Kilgore, Texas, and taught a band director there for 10 years. And
was that at the secondary level, high school, or
1 year? They hired me as a high school band director because they couldn't find anybody that was real good that late in the school year. So I was the band director for the high school for 1 year, and they would have hired me more, but I didn't. I wanted to go back to the junior. I liked the teaching the juniors and the beginners. So I think we've pretty well covered that. But the art was kind of, it was just such a wonderful adventure for me. And I remember going to museums, and I would look at the bronze pieces and look at them carefully. And I would think to myself, with the right teacher, I think I could do this. When Sherry and Michael moved to San Miguel, there was a very fine sculpture teacher there at the university. And one Christmas, Randy and I were there, and we went out to the university, and I stood in front of the sculpture studio, and I said to Randy, take my picture, because I'm coming here next summer and I'm going to learn to sculpt. And then I said, Oprah Winfrey says, if you want to do something, start talking about it. So I came back to the high school, to the Airport Elementary, and I started saying, I'm going to San Miguel this summer and I'm going to study sculpture. You won't believe it, but I'm going to San Miguel and I'm going to study sculpture. And I did. And that first class, there was a man from Florida that came every year and studied at this school, at this class. And his name was Norman. And I enjoyed it. He saw my first portrait. And one day I was working on it, and one day he said to me, he said, Mary, you don't really realize how good that is, do you? And I thought, well, man, I'm not sure, but that sounds good, And the first portrait was of a 92-year-old Mexican lady, and she sat there with her little eyes partially closed, but she was my first model, and I have a bronze model portrait of her in my house. And in the summertime, when I went back, I found her in the plaza sitting, and I brought her some flowers. Oh. And she remembered me, and I don't speak Spanish, but we had a mutual admiration of each other. I'll put it that way. But that was my first experience of learning to sculpt. And then I went there for 3 more summers and studied. And then I came back and finished my last year of teaching, went back and studied that summer, went to Dallas to my home, and I studied there. And then I moved to Austin, and I studied there then the rest of the time. One of my teachers I have had 84 classes with.
Wow.
Yeah. So my head is full of information that he taught me. And sculpting I've been retired almost 23 years, and I still enjoy sculpting. And many other things. But the sculpting, I gave myself 5 years to learn all the basics of sculpting. to learn all the most important things that I needed to learn to become a fine sculptor. And at the end of, and sometimes I would be taking 2 classes at a time. Mostly it was 1, but I'd take 2. And at the end of 5 years, I had accomplished that. Mm-hmm. And so I just kept taking classes. Mm-hmm. And I've been taking classes ever since. And it was, one reason for the classes is, number 1, you have a teacher. And number 2, you have a model. And models are expensive. You can't really afford a model for just yourself. Mm-hmm. But if you took a class, you'd have a teacher and a model. Yeah, and a model. And so I just kept studying. I just studied any class I could take. I would, and we had about 5 very famous sculpture teachers that came to Austin at different times, mm-hmm. and I was able to take a class from every one of them. Wow. And learned a lot from each one, you know. And so I've had excellent teachers, and I've worked very hard. I worked very hard at getting everything right, and thoroughly enjoyed it. It's the best thing that I could have done in retirement.
Mm-hmm. What is it about the process, it may be more than one thing, of sculpting that you so enjoy?
I think just taking a ball of clay and rolling it out, taking an armature of wire, you know, metal wire, and pushing the clay into the armature and coming out with a beautiful figure. Or for portraits, for clay portraits. You look at the person and you do your very best to mirror everything that you see. You know, their eyes, their nose, and you learn the proportions of the body, and just the feel of clay is therapeutic to me. Mm-hmm. And just to take that clay and keep working, and pretty soon you have this beautiful portrait. Mm-hmm. And most all of my pieces I had a model for, but the 4 pieces that have won awards I didn't have models for. That came out of my head.
Well, what does that tell you? You've got a really good head.
Got a good head. Yeah, because one of the ones that came out of my head won 4 awards on its own. And then my abstract.
Which piece was that? You showed me some things last year, and I might remember it. Which one was the one that was
the tall one?
Oh, the elongated.
Yes.
Oh, that's lovely.
It won 4 awards.
Oh, neat.
The abstract won 3rd prize in a huge abstract show. Mm-hmm. And nobody was more surprised than me. But the judge said, "This is a very innovative piece." So that pleased me. And then I have another piece that won. The 3 little dancers.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
That won 3rd prize in another big show. Uh-huh. And that won 3rd prize. Uh-huh. So, and one day I thought, you know, all of my awards, they didn't come from models. That's good. So,
well, you told last year when I asked you about the process, you know, what you've just now described is the making of the form, the working with the clay, the feel of the clay in your hands. But you were describing to me the process of the bronze, how you make a wax, and I wouldn't be able to tell it back to you now. I just heard it the one time. If you could tell me again, that's...
It's a strange, very complicated process. Anytime you see a bronze piece finished, mm-hmm. that bronze piece had come from a wax figure just like the piece that you're looking at.
And how did they make that wax piece?
I learned how to make figures in wax. I learned the wax process, and it was very hard to learn. It took me 3 years to really accomplish it, but that I did accomplish it, and I even taught it one time at the studio. But for the normal process, you make your piece, portrait or figure, out of clay. Then you take that piece and you put a coating on it, like chicken fried steak. You know, you dip it and dry it. You dip it and dip it. Okay, so with that clay, you cover it with a kind of a, let's see, what is it? Anyway, you cover it. And then, and sometimes you have to put several coats on it to cover the clay. And then you fire it.
So you put this covering on the clay and then fire it.
And then you fire it. And then you remove the clay, and you've got this outside cast. Okay? So the covering that you put on the piece, on the inside of that covering is the figure of the opening, the cavities from the piece. And after you get the clay out, you put the piece back together. And then you pour the wax in. And then you pour the wax in. And then you fire it again, and the wax burns out, and you have this clay piece and then.
So almost like the wax process, that firing process puts the clay back together again from
the cast that you put around the clay. You cut it and you have two pieces.
Right.
This is the front of the face, this is the back of the face. Okay, now you're putting those together.
Right.
And you seal them, and then you put wax in it and pull it apart. And now you've got a wax figure, and now that wax figure is ready to be bronzed. When you have the wax piece, you cover that with a special covering. It's kind of like plaster, but it's covered. So you're covering your wax piece. Then you put it in an oven, and you burn out the wax. So the wax is pouring out. You've got this frame like this. Okay. Now when all the wax gets out, then this is where you pour the bronze.
What an amazingly complicated procedure.
Very. Yeah. Even after I did my very first piece, it was still hard for me to believe. Now, this is something else that's hard. After the bronze cools, you have to chip off. You have to get that out coating off. You have to grind it. You have to learn, and I got really good at that. But you have to grind it off to get your figure, your bronze figure.
So that special covering is just adhered very tightly, very secure to the bronze that you have to take a special electric grinding tool or whatever and get that off.
And then see, now you've got this cavity. This is the head, the face. This is the back of the head, but it's together. And you've got all these openings, so you pour the bronze in, and then it takes about an hour for it to cool, and then you take it out of the furnace, and you have to get that. You've got to get the covering off, and you have to grind it off sometimes. Now they now have a method that's a little easier to get the bronze out, but I think I've used it one time, but it's not necessarily just plaster. It's a different type of solution, you know. And oh, now I know. They take the wax figure and they dip it in a solution and they dip it in sand and they let it dry. Then they dip it in a thicker solution, a thicker sand, and they let it dry. A thicker solution, a thicker sand. Now what they're doing, they're building the crust on this outside of this. This is wax.
Right.
And they're building this crust, and then they put it in the oven, burn out the wax, and pour the bronze.
Wow.
It's very complicated and very expensive. Very expensive. But it is so. The first piece I did was of my step granddaughter, and when I saw her come out of the fire, I thought she was ruined. I just thought she was ruined. But the fire, the crust gets all crumbly all dirty looking and everything. But then when we got that crust off of there, she was just beautiful. Bronze. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's called the lost wax process.
The lost wax.
And for years, I would try to understand the wax process, and I could not. Only after I finally went to San Miguel and saw them do it did I learn how to do it. It was interesting because I had been wanting to know what is the lost wax process, and but Michelangelo learned it. That's right. That's how he did it.
Neat. Neat. I'll just say briefly that your little house there is so comfortable and neat. The neat thing is it's like a U shape around a swimming pool. And the swimming pool, it sounds all fancy schmancy, but it's not like that. It's just that when you're in the south of Texas, to have a swimming pool that you can jump into in the middle of the day is a nice thing. It's a really nice...
Yeah.
It's not a luxury. It's almost a necessity. But what you have out there on the back porch area, Randy also is a potter, and the two of you do some pottery, and you've got your own kiln, and you do a lot of sketching, and you've got sketchbooks out there. It's such an artist.
I love to draw.
Mecca. Yeah.
I just love pencil drawing.
Yeah.
There's something about it that just pleases my heart. I just love it.
You're quite good at it.
I enjoy I really enjoy it. And I'm really proud of the ones that I've done. They really are good, you know. I look at them now and I think, that's pretty darn good,
Yeah.
And I was thinking the other day, I thought, this is a very joyful house because everywhere you look, we have happy things to do.
Mm-hmm. And you live there with your son, and your son got married very late in life and had children that are now 12 and 13, 14, 12 and 14, and they're lovely.
And so talented.
Yeah. They're just amazing. And their mother is a Mexican-American, and she is great. I like her a lot.
Yeah.
And the children are bright as they can be, and just and they spend a lot of time with you there because Randy and Ashley are no longer married,
right? But
they have a good.
They have a very amiable.
Yeah,
it's very nice.
And the children are there half the time with you.
And the young man is so compassionate and so loving and very religious. He really is reading the Bible. He's been reading the Bible for a long time. And
what's their religion?
I'm not sure if they go to church with him. I don't think she goes to church, but she's Catholic, and the grandmother and granddad are Catholic.
And they go to church with Randy, who's Protestant, and their mother was okay. So that's interesting.
And the little boy is an excellent, excellent drummer. And the other day he had a competition. There were 26 drummers, and he was number one.
Wow.
And another competition, and it was against high school students, and he was number 3. And one of the judges made him number 2. Mm-hmm. So he works very hard. Mm-hmm. He doesn't just flip around. Mm-mm. He works very hard.
Well, Randy, we didn't say that, but Randy is an amazing drummer and a drum teacher.
And, so. Yeah, and he is an amazing teacher. He in their school, they have a music memory class, mm-hmm. and they go to competition, and his students always come out with the first. Mm-hmm. They always make perfect papers. And they have to spell the composer's name in their symphonies. Mm-hmm. And they learn the symphony and the composers. And he has a special method of how he teaches them. And every year they have perfect papers. Wow. So he really is an amazing teacher. So I've been really proud of him. And I really did enjoy teaching, and I missed it a lot. In fact, the first year that I had retired and moved back to Dallas, I was in a restaurant one night by myself, and there was a mariachi band that was playing. And then a family came in with about 4 little children, and I just started crying. Sat there crying. I thought, I really miss them. I miss those children. You know, they were just so precious that you teach. And one time the principal came in and the children were singing, and she said, they don't sound Spanish. They don't sound like those. I said, well, I've taught them the songs, and I'm English. They're mocking me. And they were just singing, and it sounded just like a little English choir. And she was so surprised, so surprised. But there's one thing that happened that I have always appreciated. We had a marvelous principal. She dressed every day just gorgeous clothes, and she stood tall and had beautiful posture, and she was just a great principal. And she would come in and evaluate you. You know, all the teachers got evaluated. And on my last evaluation, she said, I always learn something when I come in your class. And I thought, oh my goodness, what a wonderful compliment that is, you know. And it was really a compliment. And that was on my last evaluation. Mm-hmm. Thrilled me. You know, it really thrilled me that she felt that way, and mm-hmm. that she would speak it. You know, a lot of people think things and they don't express them. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, so to me, like I said, from the perspective of a little bitty girl, I just thought you were amazing to look at and listen to, and always sweet and just perfection.
Yeah.
And you've done all these things. Some of them I just learned about, but I even remember when I was pretty young, and you were living in Dallas then, and we went up to see you, and you had started a business, and that was just an amazing thing. You were doing decorations for weddings, mm-hmm. and I mean, we're talking about big, fancy weddings, elaborate stuff, and you did that for quite a few years.
I did, and I got a patent on one of the products that I was making.
I have to, okay, you got a patent on one of the products. Now, I still remember, how old would I have been when we went to see you? Maybe 12? I don't remember, but upstairs you had turned that whole family room area into your little business.
Yeah.
And you had all of these. What they looked like long stem roses.
That's right. Rosebuds. Mm-hmm.
And they would, whatever the bride's colors would be, you would do all of the decorations to match it naturally. So they might want yellow or pink or red or purple or pale blue or lavender or whatever. And you'd have these satin rosebuds that you would make and fill them with rice.
Yeah.
And that would be that they could stand out there as they were leaving on their, for their honeymoon and throw the rice. But you got a patent on that because it was such a unique way of folding the shape, containing the rice within the rosebud, and they were just beautiful.
There's a little tiny story behind it. One lady did weddings, and she got in a tight. The lady that had helped her got sick or something. And I'm not sure how she knew that I could help her, but she hired me to come and help her for this one wedding. And she had these little cloth tubes, fabric tubes, and she put the rice in that little tube and then tucked the top of the little tube inside, which held the rice. You would throw it, and the rice would all come out. But then you got this little tube that's not really pretty or anything. And I went home that night. I remember driving home in the car thinking, that's an ugly little thing, And I went straight to the bedroom and got some fabric out. I don't know if there's a napkin around. Get a napkin and I'll show you right quick how to make it.
Okay. Now, the right quick is going to take me a minute, but don't worry, I'll be right back.
All right. I really felt like I could make a better rose. One that would stay pretty after you threw the rice out. And in a matter of a few minutes, I had it. But it's very difficult for people to make. They have a hard time making it. So I have to do the folding and the rolling of the rose, and then other people can finish the stem and the leaves, and that makes a difference for me. It saves me time.
Okay, here's a napkin.
Okay. You fold it like that, and then see it has a little give to it, and then I fold it over like that.
Oh my goodness. You've just made a rosebud out of a napkin.
And it was so funny because one of my sculpture friends can just do everything. She's marvelous at watercoloring, and she's just really, really talented. So she wanted to start maybe making these and selling them again, So she came over, and I showed her how to do it, and she tried it, and it fell apart. She tried it again, it fell apart. And what she couldn't do, she couldn't get this side in and then get this side in and tie it together. And I've had people try it, and they just can't do it. So if I ever did it again, I would have to do the bud, and they would have to do the stem and the leaf. I had a little leaf that went with it.
Beautiful.
That's it. And then see, when you threw it and threw the rice out or birdseed out, it stayed pretty. Where this other one was like this. Let's see if I can show you.
With the tube in it. Now, with that business, that you got a patent on it, and not surprising because it's beautiful, and
I ended up with about 40 products.
That were patented?
No, just one that was patented. The rose was patented, but I had about 40 products that I made and sold, and I had an agent, that sold to the stores.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, yeah. She was a salesman, and she would go to the stores and show them the different things, and then they'd order, and I'd bake them and mail them out. crazy.
I mean, so just to recap this, you were baking and cooking for weddings and making the decorations. You were the caterer / cake baker / decorator. You were way more than the wedding planner of modern times. Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. We did, my partner and I, we did everything except the wedding dresses. Mm-hmm. We decorated the churches. We decorated, we did all the flowers, the bridesmaids' flowers, and the bride's flowers, and all the flowers in the church. And we could do everything. Mm-hmm. And we'd go and we'd price everything, price the food and the flowers, and give them the bottom price of how much it was going to cost.
And these were society weddings.
Yeah.
These were high-end.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They were.
This is Dallas' finest neighborhood weddings. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I got certified as a food handler. Just to be sure and be legal,
right.
You know. So I went to class and got certified as a food handler. So that way we legally, you know, the only thing is that we didn't have a special kitchen, but we never did get caught on that. And
well, I think the thing that, you know, it amazes me, I mean, like I said, you're beautiful and amazing. But the thing that I want to get to is like the heart of what it is that makes you tick, that makes you say, I'm going to do that, or I want to try that, or I'm going to learn to fly. I mean, I think what you have is a zest for life that is, it's uncommon. You just...
Yeah.
How would you describe what drives you to learn and see and know and do? What is it in you? Have you thought about that at all?
I've thought about it, and I'm really not sure. But my mother went to the 8th grade, but she was very, very creative. And of course, in the early days, I did not realize how creative she really was. Mm-hmm. But if she had had the teachers that I've had, she would be on, it would be wonderful, because she did a lot of things. She ended up with a dress shop, mm-hmm. and she'd go to Dallas and buy the stock her store. And I think just kind of undermine her strength came into me. I got my strength from her.
And what do you mean, her strength? In what ways was your mother strong?
She was very positive. She was a very positive person, and I am extremely positive. Mm-hmm. You know, and for instance, if something is broken and I try to fix it and it doesn't work, I don't just put it down. I try another way. If that doesn't work, I try something else. And I work with that until I get it working again. And even if I have to have help, I go get help. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't just leave something because I didn't get it done the first time. I sort of hang in with it. And even to this day, at home, Randy and the children would be doing something and be trying to figure out something. And I'd think about it, and I thought, well, why don't they do that? You know, I just have this quick solution thing. You know, I can see things. I can see things and see how they work and how you can fix things. You know, mm-hmm. And for some people will try one time and that's it. You know, it didn't work. Well, heck, try it again. You know, and try it again. Mm-hmm. Until it works. And I've been that way for a long, long, long time. And I'm a very, very, very positive person. I don't have any negative hardly in my life. I just don't have negativity in my life at all. And I don't.
And by that you mean you don't worry about things, you don't harbor anger, or I mean.
No, I don't. I guess I've never really allowed myself to. I don't get angry very much. You have to do something really bad to one of my friends to make me angry. I just don't I don't allow other people's actions to affect my thinking or my personality or my being. I just don't allow that, you know. Mm-hmm. So therefore, I seldom ever get mad. You know, I've had people say, well, I've never seen you mad. And I said, well, thank you. You know, I try not to. But, you know, some people will just get angry and yell all the time at the least little thing that goes wrong.
You're very self-contained.
I guess that's it. Because, you know, I have a few things like that I just don't allow your actions to affect me. Mm-hmm. Now, you know, sometimes there have been occasions that I couldn't help it. But the majority of the time, I don't let other people's actions affect me. And that doesn't mean that I'm self-centered. It doesn't mean that I don't care. One lady said one time, well, you just don't care. I said, well, I care as much as you do. But I have a different approach to it. You let it make you angry, and I don't allow it to make me angry. But it doesn't make me not feel like whatever it is wrong, and I don't agree with it, but I'm not going to get angry. Mm-hmm. I just don't do that. Mm-hmm. And I seldom ever yell at anybody, or you know. I think it's one thing is my mother and father were very, very peaceful people. Mm-hmm. I never in my life heard them argue. I never heard them speak an angry word. They just didn't get mad. They didn't get mad at each other. They discussed things. Mm-hmm. But I never one time in my whole life heard them get angry at each other. So I think when you grow up in that atmosphere, you get this coating, which is wonderful, where you don't let things affect you.
Mm-hmm. Your mother had the 8th grade education, and she had children. What did she do besides take care of children? Did she ever work or have to work?
No, she didn't take care of children.
No, her children. Oh, you were an only child, so she took care of you. Right. That's right. Mm-hmm. I was trying to place a sibling, but you're an only child.
And she had strict disciplines that she put on me, you know. Mm-hmm. But she never did really get angry, and my daddy never did either.
What did he do?
He's a barber.
A barber.
He went to Dallas and got certified as a barber, went to school, came back, and he was a barber for the rest of his life.
And your mother, did she work or just stay home and care for you?
She worked several things. She had a little restaurant at the school one time.
And then she got the dress shop when she was older.
Mm-hmm.
How old was she when she started that?
I don't really know.
But you were grown.
Yeah. In fact, I had Sherry while she had the dress shop. And Sherry had the cutest little dresses ever. You know, mother would go to Dallas to shop, and she'd always pick up these beautiful little dresses for Sherry.
Wow.
And so,
neat.
But you know, and my mother she didn't get mad, and you know, some people just get mad at the least little thing. Mm-hmm. And then they'll dwell on it. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, that's no good. While they're dwelling, I'm thinking of what else I can learn. because at home, in my joyful home, I have a piano that I play every day. I have a weaving loom that I work at. I've made over 30 scarves. I have a pottery wheel that I'm learning to bake pots, and I just love that. I'm not very good at it, but I'm working on it. And I have the sculpture.
Don't forget you've been learning to crochet.
Oh, yeah, and I learned to crochet, taught myself how to crochet, and I read all the time.
So you said you always have a couple of books going.
Yeah.
What do you have on the go right now? What are you reading?
Right now I'm finishing one on Willie Nelson.
Willie Nelson.
And it's interesting.
Yeah.
But I just love to read, and I have a Kindle that I just read all the time. But I'm always looking for something new to learn, and right now I'm learning that crochet, and it has given me so much joy. I just love it. I just love putting that little hook in that loop and pulling it through, and
you said it's like magic.
Yeah, it's like magic. Mm-hmm. That's how I feel about it.
That's neat. I was up at Aunt Betty's, and she was showing me some tablecloths that her mother-in-law crocheted.
Oh, yeah.
And they're just beautiful.
They are.
They're works of art. There's one for like a dining table that's probably 10 feet by... What was the normal width of a dining table? So it'd be like 6 feet across if it's going to drop down a little bit. And she did every single one of those crocheted rounds and then crocheted them all together over and over and over. And they're beautiful.
She was amazing.
She really was. She was good, yeah.
But I crocheted coming up here. I did about 4 or 5 rows. But no, I 3 rows on the way up here. And I like to knit. Knitting... I enjoy knitting. I'm not real good at it. I mostly my knitting consists of scarves, but I do different stitches. I just finished one that turned out to be really pretty, and but I like to keep something that I'm knitting on. That way, if I get up that morning and I think, man, I think I'd like to knit for a little bit, go pick it up. Knit a while, go back and do something else. I keep something on the needles that I can just pick up and knit for a little while.
I knitted a lot, even, right before I went to Canada. I taught myself to knit, and I made Alan some caps and a scarf.
Yeah.
And then when I got there, I made I made a poncho that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I should show it to you. It's beautiful. And then... simple things like I couldn't. There is a listener who made me some socks last year, and to me, the ability to make a heel. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Or a toe for that matter. But
yeah.
the heel, I just look at that. I'm in awe of it because I could.
Yeah.
I suppose if I really sat down and I had a good teacher, like you said, a good teacher is so important, but I've just been self-taught, and the heel, making a sock to me seems like building me a pyramid.
Yeah. See, my granddaughter, she's around 42 or 30 something, and she learned to knit and crochet when she was 7 years old. And she has crocheted and knitted some of the most beautiful things you've ever laid your eyes on.
I saw you. She showed me last year the beautiful orange scarf and a couple of other things, but just beautiful work.
Yeah. And she did I may have told you this, but she did her daddy a quilt, crocheted the quilt in earth tones and the colors and that. It's like a masterpiece. It is so beautiful. And she knits and crochets all the time, no matter where she is. One day, we couldn't find any place to eat. We ended up eating at Hooters,
Hooters.
She took her crochet and she did crochet up some of these girls with these short skirts on, this man.
She didn't care. She was oblivious.
She didn't care. Yeah. That was so cute. But boy, she's really good with the needle.
Yeah, she really
She's
is.
done coats, and my mother knitted me a dress and a coat and a scarf. That is the most beautiful thing you ever laid your eyes on.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And I lined the coat. I took that coat and I put it on the table and I opened it up. I made a pattern first of the coat. And then I took net, not tulle, but net. You know, it's a little stiffer.
Yes. Yeah.
And I cut the pattern and I made the back and I put the net on the back and I hand whipped it to the knitting and did the same thing for the front. And then I made took the pattern, made a satin lining for the coat, and I put it in the coat and made it. It just turned out, it was so beautiful. And then she made a scarf and a belt, and I wore it to New York for the Macy's parade and went in Saks Fifth Avenue, and a lady behind the counter said to me, "That's the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." I never will forget that. Because the color is a beautiful, beautiful shade of orange. Now, it's not real dark, and it's not real bright, you know. It's just a gorgeous shade of orange. Kind of almost like a salmon. It's not as light as salmon is, but it's about that color. Mm-hmm.
So what I want to know. So you don't get angry. You don't let other people's actions affect you. You have a joyful home. You learn all the time. You read. You do your art projects. Are there like words of wisdom or things to live by? What are you most proud of in your life? What do you live by? What are you most proud of? Those are two different questions, but
I'm proud of the fact that I succeeded in being a band director, because when you think about it and think about learning all those instruments and teaching students how to play the instruments, I'm very proud of the method that I learned to learn how to teach those instruments. And I'm very proud of the relationship that I still have with a lot of my students. I have one student that was in my very first class that just emailed me the other day. We have stayed in touch all these years. I'm very proud of that, because that tells me that they cared, you know, that they cared and they appreciated what their teachers were doing. So I'm proud of that. And then I'm just proud of being able to, what I call kind of going with the flow. You know, I'm proud that I don't get involved where I shouldn't get involved. I keep my mouth shut when I need to keep it shut. Sometimes that's hard, but I do it. And I'm just proud of what my mother taught me by her actions, to keep learning and to be patient. A very, very patient person. You know, I'm proud that I don't get angry and waste time being angry. That being angry is a waste of time. It really is, you know. I have a friend, she gets angry, she'll be angry for a week. Well, that's a lost week. I just don't do that. I don't do it. It's not worth it. So I'm just kind of proud that I'm as calm as I am, and that I enjoy my life, and I try to help other people. I do my best to help other people. And I appreciate, right now, being 95, I really appreciate the help of other people. Mm-hmm. And I have found that in the Valley, it has been amazing at how helpful those people are. Mm-hmm. And so...
Well, see, that's the one thing. I mean, what really distresses me is all of the division that is artificially created. So it's Democrat versus Republican, and black versus white, and Mexican versus white, and mm-hmm. Division. It's hatred, it's anger, and like you said, it's wasted time. And mm-hmm. I always say, well, we all have a common enemy, and it isn't each other. It's, there's other people that are pulling the strings. Right. Why get angry with each other? Mm-hmm. And it makes me feel good that you have learned that, because I learned that many, many years ago, that there is something beautiful in the Mexican culture. And there are lots of beautiful things, but mm-hmm. one of the things that I always liked was their devotion to family. Yeah. And like you said, they're always busy. There's a birthday party or an anniversary or a wedding mm-hmm. or a funeral, or but their devotion to family is mm-hmm. pretty amazing.
And especially to the elders.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I have a lady that comes 2 hours a week and helps me. And she is just the loveliest little person. I just love her. And she's only been working for me for about 3 or 4 weeks, maybe a little longer. But she'll say, no, Miss Mary, I'll do that. I'll try to help her. And she says, no, I'll do that. And then she helps me cook. She does the laundry for me. And that has been a really big help. But they're just so kind.
That's great that that's great that you've done that, because you didn't have that last year. It was just you.
I have good housekeepers now, and I have yard men, and I have this lady that comes 2 hours a week. I told Betty Ann, I said, Betty Ann, I think you're eligible for that, and so I'm going to send her the information and see if she can call and get her 2 hours a week.
It's something that the state pays for? Or Social Security?
It's United Health. Mm. And it doesn't cost me a penny. Mm-hmm. And she comes every week mm-hmm. and helps me. And it's amazing. At first, they said, we give you 8 hours a month. And I thought, well, that's not much. And then 2 hours a week, well, that's not much. But boy, after the first time she came, I thought, this is really going to help me. And it has.
That's great.
But anyway, to be 95 and to be as happy as I am, I think it may be a little unusual.
Well, I love you, and I am glad that you just got to pop up here for a couple of days. And
I was looking forward to it.
Yeah, and so I'm hoping that it's not too much longer before we get to see each other again. And I thank you for being such a good sport and sitting down and recording this with me. Nobody's safe. When they come in the house, I'm going to make them talk into the microphone.
Oh, well, it's kind of, it's fun to reminisce about the various things that have happened. And Evadine and I we've had some really.
Evadine is Mary's friend. That was part of the reason that she came up. She's in a nursing home. She had a fall. Possibly there were some other complicating health issues. They never really got to the bottom of it. But Evadine is 98 years old and still sharp as a tack. Mm-hmm. And Evadine and Mary have traveled literally all over the world. Well, they've been all over the country. They've been to Mexico a few times together, and they've had some Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Mm-hmm. And you've had some adventures and some misadventures.
Right. Lots of memories. and I really enjoy thinking about them, you know. And I wrote to Everdeen the other day, and I wrote about, let's see, which one did I write about? I think I wrote about the time we were in Mexico and we rode the bus and didn't hear the instructions, and we got back and the bus was gone, and yeah, I think that's the one I wrote her about, and I thought she'd get a kick out of it, and she did.
That was quite an adventure. That was.
But nearly every time we went on a trip, we went to Puerto Vallarta. I can't ever say it correctly.
Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah, and we spent a week down there. That was fun. She flew in from one place, and I flew in from another, and we met at the airport. And so we've had a really good time. But 2 or 3 times I look at it now and I'm thinking, you girls could have really gotten in trouble, you know.
Yeah.
But we were in a taxi going the wrong direction, you know. But we we finally got the taxi driver to stop, and we found a man that spoke English, and I remembered the name of the district. We didn't know. We hardly knew where we were going, but I remembered the district. And when I said that, this man said, "Oh," so then he rattled off to the taxi driver, and the taxi driver took us to the place. Well, they could have taken us anywhere.
Yeah.
But they didn't. But that was so funny because Everdeen pointed that direction and called out where she thought we were going. Oh, but anyway, we've had a good time.
That's great.
And so, and you know, I look back and I think, you know, how fortunate I've been. Mm-hmm. I've been a very fortunate person. I've had some rough times, and I've had some rough situations, but I've always managed to try to stay as calm as I could and get out of it, you know, figure out what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, I was really looking forward to coming over here and having some time with Betty, and she's such a nice lady, and so. But maybe you can come to see us again.
Yes, I'd love to do that. Well, I think we'll say goodbye to the listeners, and if there's any other word of wisdom or anything else you want to share, but otherwise
I would just like to express the beauty and the beauty of learning of learning new things. I think people that strive to learning new things are very happy people, and I think that's one thing that could really help a lot of people get on the happy side instead of on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would advise people to find something you want to learn, get a good teacher, and learn it.
Good advice. That's good advice. All right. Well, I thank you so much for doing this with me. It was fun.
Well, thank you.
I'll definitely want to head down to South Texas.
Yeah. Well, it was a new experience for me.
And we've learned that you love new experiences.
Absolutely. Oh, man.
All right. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome.
So thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this. And next week, on the 14th of September, I'll be joined in conversation with Neil Foster. So thank you, as always, for tuning in. Goodbye.
I've got something that the world didn't give me, and the world cannot take it away. And I've got something that the world didn't give me, and the world cannot take it away. Well, it is love. sent to me from my Father up above.